Hello friends, welcome to the session on Python programming. In this session, we'll be discussing about exceptions in the Python program. In this session, we will see what we mean by exceptions in the Python program, how the exceptions can be handled in the Python program. We will see what are the built-in exceptions in the Python program and how it is possible for a programmer to handle the exceptions within the program code. Friends, as you know that you are viewing this session on my YouTube channel and you can subscribe to the channel so that you can watch many other videos on the various topics in the subjects of electronics and computer science. So let us start the session with the question what we mean by exceptions in the Python program. Friends, you will find that whenever we write any code by using any programming language, then always certain errors will occur within our program code. So in Python also, whenever we write certain Python program, then the program will not execute in the one attempt only. And you will find that the program may generate unexpected output, or sometimes the program will behave abnormally. So these are the errors. So whenever a program is being written, we will find that certain errors will occur within the program. Sometimes these errors are the syntax error. Sometimes these errors are the runtime errors. Or even sometimes you will find that we can have the logical errors in our code. So in Python, exceptions are just nothing but these errors. And these errors that are normally triggered automatically. So the compiler will raise the exceptions and the user or the programmer will be pointed to the error that is being generated by the Python interpreter. It is also possible that the exceptions can be forcefully triggered. That is, the programmer himself can check whether the syntax is correct or not, and he can forcefully trigger the errors, and he can handle such errors or exceptions within the program code. Syntax errors are detected when we do not follow the grammatical rules of writing the constructs of the programming language. Whenever we write any statement in the programming language, then we need to follow the syntax associated with that statement. But if you do not follow it, then you will find that the errors will be generated. So syntax errors are reported by the Python interpreter, and it will give the brief explanation about the error, and it will also suggest it how to rectify it. Say for example, if I write a small code where marks is equal to 98, and if I ask print mark, then you will find that what I have done is that I have forgotten to make the use of bracket while using this print function. So the Python interpreter will give me the syntax error, and it will say that the missing parenthesis in the call to print. And it will also suggest you that do you want to make the use of print followed by the bracket. So user can easily understand that what exactly is the syntax error. And then according to the suggestion, the user can make corrections in the said statement. And once it is rectified, then you can get the corresponding output. So even if a statement or expression is syntactically correct, it is also possible that there may arise certain error during the program execution. So it doesn't mean that only syntax error are the exceptions. But apart from the syntax error, there can be some other errors as well. So for example, if you try to open a file which doesn't exist, or if you try to divide by 0, then such errors are being generated, and these errors are also called as the exceptions. So such type of the errors will disturb the normal execution of the program, and therefore these errors are being called as the exceptions. So syntax error is also exceptions, but these errors are also called as the exceptions. An exception, you can say, is a Python object that will represent an error. So when an error occurs during the execution of the program, an exception has to be raised. So either the Python interpreter will raise the exception, or it is possible that the programmer can also raise the exception. Such an exception needs to be handled by the programmer so that the program will not get terminated abnormally. So whenever exception is raised, then the program termination will take place and further part of the program will not be executed. So if you want to avoid it, then such exceptions can be handled by the programmer, and such handling can be easily done in the Python. Therefore, whenever we go for the design of the programmer can anticipate such error situations and which will cause during its execution of the program, and it can write a code through which it is possible that the programmer can handle the exceptions. You will find that there are certain built-in exceptions in the Python. Some commonly occurring exceptions are usually defined in the Python interpreter itself, and these exceptions are being called as the built-in exceptions. So for example, we have the built-in exceptions such as syntax error. So it is being raised when there is an error in the syntax of the Python code. There is another type of the built-in exceptions such as value error. It is being raised when the built-in method or operation receives an argument that has the right data type but mismatched or inappropriate values. So whenever you try to assign inappropriate values, then it will cause an error or exception called as the value error. There is an IO error. It is being raised when the file specified in the program statement cannot be opened. There is a keyboard interrupt error, and it is raised when the user accidentally hits the delete or escape key while executing the program, due to which the normal flow of the program is interrupted. There is an import error. It is being raised when the requested module definition is not found in the library. There is a end of file error, EOF error. It is being raised when the end of file condition is reached without reading any data by the input. There is a zero division error. This is raised whenever in the denominator we are dividing by a zero. There is an index error when the index or subscript in a sequence is out of range, then this error is being raised. There is a name error. It is being raised when the local or global variable name is not found by the interpreter. There is an indentation error. It is being raised due to the correct indentation in the program code. So whenever you do not follow the rules of the indentation, then this error is being raised. There is a type error. It is being raised when the operator is supplied with a value of incorrect data type. So the data type must be matched. If they are not matched, then the type error will be raised. There is an overflow error. It is being raised when the result of the calculation exceeds the maximum limit for the numeric data type. So whenever there is a built-in exception, then the appropriate exception handled code is executed, which displays the reason along with the raised exception name. So you will find that the exception name is being printed on the screen. And then the programmer has to take an appropriate action in order to correct it or in order to handle it. So for example, if I write on the Python prompt 100 divided by 0, then you will find that there is an exception raised such as zero division error. So it will give us that you are dividing by 0. If I write M1 divided by 23, then you will find that the name error will be printed on the screen, since the name M1 is being not assigned any value and therefore it is not defined. If I write 23 plus a single apostrophe or single quote 8, then you will find that there is a type error which is being raised. So unexpected or unsupported operand type for plus. So first is the integer and the second is the string. So such addition cannot be performed by the Python, and therefore the type error will be raised. So a programmer can also create a custom exceptions to suit one's requirement. And this is being called as a user-defined exceptions. So apart from the built-in exceptions, there are certain exceptions that can be raised by the programmer or the customer. And therefore, these exceptions are being called as the user-defined exceptions. Exception handlers are designed to execute when a specific exception is raised. So programmer can also forcefully raise the exception in the program using the statement called as the raise and assert. So there are two provisions in the Python which can be used in order to raise the exception. The first one is called as the raise and the second one is called as the assert. Once the exception is raised, no further statement in the current block of the code will be executed. So raising an exception involves interrupting the normal flow of the execution of the program. And we will jump to the part of the program which can be called as an exception handler code. And that code has to be written such that the exception situation can be handled properly. The raise statement can be used to throw an exception. And whenever we write the raise statement within the Python, then that can be written as the raise keyword. Then we have to give appropriate exception name. And then in the square bracket, we can make the use of optional arguments. So let us understand how the exceptions can be raised in the Python. So the argument is generally a string that is being displayed when the exception is raised. So for example, the value of the variable L we are making the use of here. Suppose we have a list where the list will consist of some elements. And suppose we are making the use of the variable L equal to 10. Now, if I write the code, if L is greater than length of n colon, raise index error, print error, else print L. So whenever you will find that we will execute this part of the program, then you will find that the index error will be raised because the value of L is equal to 2. That is, the index is less than the index for the list n is less than 10, and therefore such error will be generated. So the value of variable L is greater than the length of the list of n, and therefore index error exception will be raised. So this is a exception which is being created by the programmer. So the statement following the raise statement will not be executed, and therefore the message error will not be displayed in this case. There is another statement that can also be used for raising the exception, and that is being called as an assert statement in the Python. So we can also make the use of assert statement. Say for example, if we have a function check n followed by the argument n colon, and then we will make the use of assert n greater than or equal to 0 negative number, and then we print n into n, and then we print check n of 12, and then we will print check in of -5. So whenever you execute this part of the code on the Python interpreter, then one can easily find that in the first case, the value of n is greater than 0, and therefore this condition becomes true. And whenever the condition is true, then this part of the code will not be executed, and therefore we will get the value 144, that is n square. But when the value of n is -5, then this condition will return as a false, and therefore no value will be assigned. Therefore none value will be printed, and the exception such as oops negative number will be printed on the screen. So in the assert statement, if the result after testing comes false, then the exception is raised. And this statement is generally used in the beginning of a function or after a function call to check for the valid input. So whenever we want to check for any valid input in the Python program, then in that case, we can make the use of assert statement. An assert statement has to be used either at the beginning of the function, or you can make it at the end of the function. And its syntax, as shown in this example, is that we can make the use of assert expression, and then in the square bracket, we can write the arguments. It is also possible that we can make the use of try and expect. So exception is said to be caught when a code that is assigned to handle a particular exception is executed. Exceptions, if any, are caught in a try block, and they can be handled in another block, and that is being called as the except block. So while writing or debugging a program, a user might doubt an exception to occur in a particular part of the program or in particular part of the code. And therefore, such code can be put inside a try block. So in many programming languages, such as PHP and other programming languages, we can always make the use of try and expect block. So try block is always followed by another block, and this block in the Python is being called as the except block. The appropriate code to handle each of the possible exceptions are written inside the except clause. So while executing the program, if an exception is encountered, then the further execution of the code inside the try block is stopped, and then the control will be transferred to the except block. So general syntax for using try and except is like this: try colon, and then we can write the statements of the program where the exceptions may occur. And then we will write except, where we will make the use of some exception name colon, and then we will write the code for handling of the such exception. So for example, we will write a small Python code by using try and except. Suppose try colon, numerator is equal to 50, denominator is equal to, we will accept the input and we will convert it into integer, enter the denominator. Then we will print numerator divided by denominator. We will print division performed successfully. Now we will write the except, zero division error, colon, print denominator as 0 is not allowed. So whenever you execute this part of the program by using Python interpreter, suppose initially I will get the message, enter the denominator. I will enter the value 14. Now 50 divided by 14, I will get the result 3.571, and I will get the message division performed successfully. If I again execute it, and suppose if I enter the denominator equal to 0, then you will get the message on the screen, denominator as 0 is not allowed. So thank you friends for viewing the session. Hopefully you have understood what are the exceptions and how the errors or exceptions can be handled in the Python program. Thank you all.